Hi, everyone, and welcome to our very first episode of Project 19. My name is Alyssa Vilches, and I'm joined by my co-founder, Philip D'Souza, who is going to share more about our new program.
Thanks so much, Alyssa. We're really excited to get started. Essentially, through Project 19, we want to offer a platform to share exclusive insight on how COVID-19 impacts your personal and social lives. Project 19 shares stories to bring awareness and enlighten others based on your individual experiences. Together, we will move forward. Alyssa, why don't we welcome our very first guest to the show?
Absolutely. Today, our guest is Josh Tufino, who is here to share his story.
Hi guys, thank you guys for having me here. It's a pleasure.
Great. So, Josh, how are you feeling today? I know you've had a tough ride over the past few months.
Yeah, it's been a tough couple of months, but I'm honestly feeling a lot better now, and things are turning around.
Well, I'm glad you're feeling better. Do you mind describing your experience when you contracted the virus?
Well, my experience when I contracted the virus was very interesting and unique compared to, other people.
First victory of the season as they pile on a 2-1 win for the Purple Eagles against Northern Kentucky. Found themselves in a 1-0 hole.
8 to 10 people on my team actually contracted the virus, and it was kind of seemed like, not a big deal. Everybody got it, get over it a couple days, and, that's it. In my case, it was a lot different. For the first couple days, I was fine. I thought I was over the hill, but 5 days into it, things got a lot worse.
It's been 3.5 weeks since I got COVID, and
I went to the hospital. The first time, they told me I was fine. I went back 3 other times, and to say that I didn't feel right, something was wrong. Everything came back negative, and they sent me home with Tylenol and ibuprofen and just simple medications. They basically said that there's nothing you can do, it's COVID, and you just have to deal with it. And the problem was I just couldn't wrap my head around it. I just had to think maybe something else is wrong with me. So a week later, right before I was gonna go home, these chest pains started to come back again. I went back to the hospital just to get a quick visit, and it turned out to be a 2-night stay. So I wasn't expecting that, but they may have found something in my heart, they said. So they kept me overnight to monitor me, to make sure, everything was cool and everything was, okay. And it was tough because I was alone for a lot of that time, being in my house by myself. I couldn't go home because I didn't want to give my parents, who are high risk, COVID or the chance of getting COVID. So I didn't want to increase any chances for that. So it became a very difficult, time period of what I should do and how I should do and how can I cope with myself in this situation.
Yeah, for sure. And you can only imagine, like, you're young, you're getting this virus pretty early, actually, compared to everyone else. And I guess, so how did you adapt to the pandemic from the beginning stages up until now?
So it was interesting. The way I adapted to the pandemic and the way it changed was through a couple of ways. The first, I'd say half of it was, the idea that it's a pandemic, but it's not that big of a deal. My mindset and mentality was kind of, relaxed and nonchalant. And if I get it, I get it. Everything's okay. I'll get it one day type of mentality. Everyone's going to get it type of mentality. And I was kind of reckless in the beginning, and I think many people were until, cases started to really rise and we kind of had more research on what it could actually do to you. Then towards the second half, when I started noticing people I knew getting it, and when I got it, the way I had to change was very drastic. I had to be more aware, more cautious, and I kind of understood that now that this can actually affect people very seriously. And now that I'm going from a nonchalant phase, I'm going from an overcautious phase, that even when I test negative, I'm still very careful of, who I say hi to, how close I am, or even just, simple shaking hands with someone who I know doesn't have COVID, or even I know I don't have COVID, still being aware, more aware now than times before. So just adapting in ways like that and being more self-aware and aware of others is something I had to do.
So, Josh, I know that this pandemic has brought up like a lot of struggles in your life. Can you tell us what the biggest struggle was during this pandemic, whether it was mentally, physically, or emotionally?
I think when it comes to my experience specifically, I think it involved all three, if anything. physically it tore me apart because you grind so hard, to make sure that this off season you're ready for the next season, the possible next season that's coming up, and you want to be at your best and feel the best, working out, eating right, going for your runs, playing soccer as much as possible. And then when the pandemic hits, or when the virus hit me, I not only lost the motivation to do all that, but I lost everything that I kind of gained for in the past 3, 4, 5 months that I've been training. Emotionally, it's heartbreaking. It can be depressing. It involves anxiety and stress that you kind of didn't anticipate. And then from a mental aspect, I kind of looked at the social things about it. I couldn't see anybody for so long. I had to be stuck in my room for more than just 2 weeks, 3, 4, 5 weeks almost. So that extended period of time kind of, distance yourself from like the real world, and you kind of like forget how to act around people. You kind of miss talking to people, Again, FaceTime and technology obviously helps with social media, but it's just not the same. And I think that not having that social ability to talk to people and laugh and enjoy times with others really puts a damper on you, because that's the things that might make you feel better. And I think that a lot of the mental and physical destruction that I incurred was from not being able to be around people that I loved, or having or embracing the love from other people.
Yeah, for sure. Could you tell us a little bit about that day that you were admitted into the hospital? Tell us how you felt and what sort of things were going through your mind.
Yeah, it was there was a couple of occasions that were very interesting. The first one, when I was in the hospital, I was just thinking that I was gonna get some blood work and get the results, and I'll be on my way. The doctor came out of nowhere, opened the blinds or whatever, the room, and said, "Where's your IV? We gotta take you upstairs. We gotta put you in this wheelchair." And I was just so confused. My heart dropped. I'm thinking like, oh my God, they found like cancer in me, or like I'm done. That's it. There goes Josh. And I just kept saying, I'm like, "Sir, you have the right person. Like, are you sure? Like, are you sure?" He's like, "Yes." "Are you the one with the chest pains?" "Yes." And I kind of, just followed along. I came onto the wheelchair, and I was just like, oh my God, like, what is wrong with me? And then it turned out that they just wanted to make sure and, get a CAT scan of my lungs to make sure that I don't have any, blood clots or any sort of inflammation that they can rule out. The second time, when they made me stay at the hospital, I was just, sick and tired of it. I just didn't want to deal with it. The feeling of it just made me feel like, all the doctors in the past are wrong about me. Finally, they found something wrong with me. It's almost as if I kept on digging something for myself, that, there has to be something wrong with me. Like, they gotta find something. So when they kind of stayed the 2 nights there, I was like, oh wow, like, this is it. They're gonna find out what's wrong with me, and hopefully they can fix it. If not, so can be. At least I can have the peace of mind that I got checked out. So that feeling, the feelings of both those times were very, heart dropping, and as if like, you're a totally different person. You went from this healthy soccer player to this, very sick, ill person, just in the switch. So that was definitely not the, most exciting thing to go through.
Personally, I'm really glad that you're having a healthy recovery and everything's working out on your side. I know that you DJ and you have a lot of other hobbies other than soccer. Can you tell us a little bit about how that was affected because of the pandemic?
Yeah, there's a couple things with that. The DJing basically just got cut out, from everything. There's no clubs, there's no parties, there's no, bars, there's nothing like that. So my line of work, when it comes to DJing, I can't make, income. So that is another extra stress on me, during this pandemic that made it harder, But the reason why I got into DJing is to, deal with stress and the times when I was injured from soccer, that was kind of my like mechanism of, getting out of that, mentality of being depressed and sad that I'm hurt or I can't play or I can't do this. But when the virus, came into play, it made it much more difficult to play, because I didn't have the desire or motivation to, DJ. I didn't like to hear loud noises. When you get sick, the last thing you want to hear is blasting music in your ears, and so that kind of limited my ways to de-stress myself or to get rid of the anxiety and depression when I had COVID and I was alone. Luckily, I kind of find a new avenue when it came to pleasing that musical side of me, which is a piano, which I just purchased a couple weeks before the pandemic hit, thankfully, and that kind of was more soothing, more relaxing, and more easier on my ears. So that was kind of a way for me to cope with the stress. But overall, when it came with DJing and working during the pandemic, you just have to think about it that you're not doing it for the money, you're not doing it to get all the exposure and fame. I kind of just did it because I loved it, and that's why I stayed true to myself and still do it just because I love it. If it means that there's a pandemic for the rest of my life and I can't DJ, so be it. But as long as I can do it for myself, that's what matters.
Yeah, for sure. And you talk a lot about the struggle of being alone, and with the use of social media and the privilege we have today with technology, what sort of things do you find yourself doing in isolation?
Yeah, honestly, when it comes to the pandemic and having all this technology and abilities to do things that people before couldn't do, I tried to find different ways of things that could make me productive, but at the same time not stress myself out. So getting ahead of time when it comes to like some work, and it's obviously we just finished my final exam, so getting ahead of assignments to make sure that I'm de-stressed definitely helped out a lot. And then I kind of moved away from technology in a way and kind of looked into other avenues like books and stuff like that. I know I started reading the book called The Secret, which kind of was very inspiring and kind of helped me get through this virus. So technology helped, but at the same time it wasn't my main source avenue when it came to distressing or getting away from the mentality that I have COVID and I have to get over it. So it was an interesting dynamic when I had between technology and other stuff.
You mentioned that book. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, the book The Secret is an interesting book. It's basically talks about the law of attraction, and everything positive and negative in your life you can attract. And basically, if you think it and you believe it, it will come to you eventually. You just have to be faithful to it and believe it. And there was one part that really kind of spoke out to me, and it talks about the secret of health. And in that part of the book, it talked a lot about people who've had near life death experiences, but recovered through it, not from medication, not from any source of therapy, but just from believing and having that positive mentality to let the body heal itself. So I know it can sound kind of far-fetched for a lot of people, but the more you think about it, and the more I think about it from my personal experience, the more I start to put pieces together and think, wow, like this is a true thing. I noticed that when I had COVID and I was really like at the worst point, I noticed that these symptoms went away when I was talking to people, FaceTiming people, laughing when I'm watching a movie, when I was not really thinking about it and more kind of bringing more positive things into my life. It got worse when I, thought the worst things, thought that I had something wrong with me, thought that, why me, and kind of got more anxious with that type of stuff. So that book kind of helped me, realize as much as, medicine is great for us recovering from disease, and I'm for sure it's essential, but your mind has a very big factor when it comes to healing and overall what, how successful you are in your life. So it really helped me, keep that mindset.
That sounds like an awesome book, and hopefully I get the chance to read it by the end of this year. If not, I'll definitely get a chance to read it next year. I know you had an injury last year that stopped you from playing the season. I know that you worked super hard off the field to make sure that you could play and that you were keeping up with your rehab. How did you feel when the season got canceled because of COVID?
Yeah, it was, dealing with injuries is probably one of the most common thing I've had to deal with my whole life, and especially my college career. Especially as a Division I athlete, it's very mentally and physically demanding with balancing between school, soccer, and again for me DJing. It became a lot of work on my body. I had a sports hernia from overworking. And then when I came back, I had another issue with my hip flexors and just overall injuries that just kept setting me back. When I finally felt healthy, I was ready to play. I trained all summer long. And when we heard the news that our season got canceled, again, you feel like all that work you just kind of did for nothing, you know, especially it being my final extra year, my 5th year, but my final year, you kind of like finally want to put the nail in the coffin and say, all right, this is it. This is my last shot. This is my last go at college and give it your all. But when COVID comes and says, sorry, not yet, or sorry, we're going to have to take it away from you, it kind of made it, you know, very depressing. A lot, not for me, but for all the players. We had, as soon as we heard the news through our phones, we kind of just all looked at each other and kind of like really got down on ourselves. It was really depressing. You start doing things that you wouldn't normally do and start, you know, deterring away from what you had before, and that mentality of, you know, grinding for soccer, and kind of just become complacent and just, you know, forget that everything you've worked for and everything you've hoped for. So it was really, you know, draining mentality.
You know what? I think you could definitely say the same for some of your teammates as well. I bet you a lot of other student athletes or athletes in general are going through the same sort of thing, especially having their seasons canceled. And I guess what advice, since you had COVID yourself, what advice would you give to other athletes moving forward?
The advice that I could give for other athletes, I would round it to 2 or 3 things. The first thing is definitely have a good support system. Whether you have COVID, whether you have, whether your season gets canceled, whatever may happen in your life, having the support system and being around positive friends is the best way to get over, you know, these obstacles that come into your life. Surrounding yourself with negative people or people who can't support you will only make you, you know, deteriorate quicker than you have to. The second thing that I recommend, or the advice that I can give for athletes, is never stop going. I know that a lot of people, when they view this pandemic, it sets them back, but there is still an opportunity to grow from this pandemic. Some people can view things either a positive way or a negative way. In this aspect, some people can find it to have more time to train on their own, maybe do more individual training or do more work on their own type of thing. Now that there's a pandemic, you kind of, you know, restrict other things. Maybe you can't go out as much, but you can use that time with something else. So you got to always kind of, you know, adapt and figure what you can do out of the situation rather than look at the downside and see what you can't do. So definitely for athletes, just, you know, keep going and never stop no matter what, and just do what you can, because you grinding right now and another person isn't, it's only going to put you ahead of the game.
Awesome. That's really great. And, you know, I have one more question. That's the question you see all over social media. If you could sum up this year in one word, what would that be?
Put me on the spot. If I could sum up this year in one word, I would have to say emotional. I would say that. And just because that's what it was. This year was emotional. It brought not just one emotion, it brought hundreds and hundreds of emotions throughout the world into different people in different situations. So I think I'm going to give it that word, emotional.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I know that there has been a lot of negative perceptions of this virus. What is one takeaway that you received from this experience, but more in a positive way?
You know, the positive thing that I took about this experience, and there's a couple, but I'll give it to the main one, is to never give up. And what I learned about myself is that the power of your mind and to choose to not give up is more powerful than any sort of, you know, physical or stressful situation that could, you know, occur to you. So having that mentality that I can get over COVID and I can get over these obstacles just shows me that I'm not only don't give up, but I will thrive afterwards no matter what. So that's kind of like the positive aspect, that, you know, injuries can't stop me, you know, my season canceled can't stop me, COVID can't stop me, you know, I can keep going no matter what.
For sure. Listen, Josh, we'd just like to thank you so much for sharing your story today, and it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. We appreciate your time.
thank you guys for having me. I appreciate you guys for, giving me this interview, and I hope athletes around the world can learn from this and hopefully take something from this. Thank you guys.
So everyone, to wrap this up, this has been our very first episode of Project 19. It has been an incredible success, and we look forward to sharing more stories in our upcoming episodes.
Absolutely. You can email us or send us a DM at Project 19 Platform on Instagram to tell your story.
For now, it's been Alyssa Vilches and Philip D'Souza on Project 19, and we'll see you next time.